Formula One. Drivers are supposed to be the pinnacle of professionalism. Cool under pressure, respectful competitors, ambassadors for the sport. You know, classy stuff. Yeah, that's complete bullshit. What F1 actually gives us is a bunch of millionaire adrenaline junkies with massive egos, locked in metal death traps, traveling at 200 miles per hour while trying to psychologically destroy each other. And honestly, it's way more entertaining than whatever PR-friendly nonsense the sport tries to sell you. Tonight, we're diving into 4 rivalries that prove F1 drivers are just as petty, vindictive, and downright savage as the rest of us. Except, they settle their differences with million-dollar missiles on wheels. From childish mind games to career-ending betrayals, these aren't just racing rivalries. These are personal vendettas that left permanent scars on the sport itself. Let's start with what should have been a simple case of teammate rivalry, but somehow devolved into the most passive-aggressive workplace drama in motorsport history. 2009, Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber at Red Bull Racing. On paper, it looked perfect. The young German prodigy and the experienced Australian veteran, working together to challenge for championships. What could go wrong? Everything. Literally everything. The problems started early, but nobody noticed because Red Bull was too busy pretending they had a happy family atmosphere. You know, the kind of happy family where one brother constantly steals the other's toys and then acts surprised when things get ugly. The first crack appeared at the 2010 Turkish Grand Prix. Vettel, apparently deciding that racing lines were more like racing suggestions, drove straight into Webber while they were running 1-2. Both cars retired. Vettel blamed Webber. Webber blamed Vettel. Red Bull blamed racing incidents. Classic F1 diplomacy. When in doubt, blame physics. But the real savagery was just getting started. See, Red Bull had a little problem. They kept giving Vettel the better strategies, the newer parts, the preferential treatment. You know, subtle stuff that definitely wouldn't create any workplace tension. Webber, being Australian, handled this with all the diplomatic grace you'd expect, which is to say, none whatsoever. The breaking point came at the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix. Red Bull had given team orders, multi-21, meaning Webber in car 2 should stay ahead of Vettel in car 1. Simple enough, right? Vettel had other plans. He ignored the team orders, passed Webber, and won the race. Then, in a masterclass of fake sincerity, apologized, while clearly not meaning a single word of it. Webber's response? Multi-21, Seb, multi-21, delivered with the kind of cold fury that could freeze hell over. The aftermath was beautiful in its pettiness. Webber stopped sharing setup data. Vettel got increasingly paranoid about team favoritism. Red Bull kept insisting everything was fine, while their drivers were basically conducting psychological warfare in the garage. The rivalry ended when Webber retired in 2013, but not before delivering one final middle finger to the whole situation. At his last race, he thanked everyone at Red Bull except Vettel, on live television, in front of millions of viewers. Petty? Absolutely. Effective? You bet. The Vettel-Webber rivalry proved that sometimes the most savage battles happen between people who have to share the same coffee machine every morning. If Vettel and Webber were workplace enemies, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg were something far more dangerous. Former best friends with championship ambitions, these two had known each other since they were kids in karting. They'd been teammates, friends, probably shared juice boxes, and complained about homework together. Adorable, right? Then Mercedes gave them the fastest car in F1 history, and suddenly, those childhood friendships didn't seem so important anymore. 2014. The Mercedes W05 was so dominant it made the rest of the grid look like they were driving shopping carts. Hamilton and Rosberg were guaranteed to fight for the championship. The only question was how ugly it would get. Spoiler alert, very ugly. The psychological warfare started immediately. Rosberg, apparently taking notes from a Cold War spy manual, began playing mind games that would make a chess grandmaster proud. He'd accidentally reveal Hamilton's telemetry data to the media. He'd make subtle comments about Hamilton's lifestyle affecting his performance. Classic passive-aggressive German efficiency. Hamilton, never one to back down from a fight, responded with his own brand of psychological torture. He'd show up to team meetings late, blast music during Rosberg's interviews, and generally act like the cool kid who knows he's cooler than you. The on-track incidents were even better. Belgium 2014. Rosberg accidentally punctured Hamilton's tire while trying to make a point about racing room. Sure, Nico, we totally believe that was an accident. But the real masterpiece of pettiness came at Monaco 2014. Rosberg was on pole, Hamilton second. During qualifying, Rosberg made a mistake at the chicane, bringing out yellow flags and preventing Hamilton from improving his lap time. Hamilton was convinced it was deliberate. Rosberg insisted it was genuine. The stewards believed Rosberg. Hamilton didn't speak to him for months. The rivalry reached peak toxicity in 2016. By this point, they weren't even pretending to be friends. Team meetings became exercises in barely contained hostility. The Mercedes garage felt like a divorce proceeding where both parties were fighting over custody of the fastest car in F1. The final blow came at the 2016 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Hamilton, leading the championship fight, deliberately slowed down the pace to back Rosberg into the chasing pack. It was a brilliant tactical move and a complete violation of team orders. Mercedes was furious. Rosberg was terrified. Hamilton didn't care. He was playing for keeps. Rosberg won the championship by 5 points. Then, in the most savage move of all, he immediately retired from F1. Just walked away, leaving Hamilton to wonder what might have been. The Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry destroyed a friendship that had lasted decades. But it gave us 3 years of psychological warfare that was better than any soap opera. Now we're getting into the serious stuff. Michael Schumacher versus Damon Hill wasn't just a rivalry. It was a masterclass in how to destroy someone's career while maintaining plausible deniability. 1994. Ayrton Senna had died at Imola, leaving F1 in shock and creating a power vacuum at the top of the sport. 2 men stepped forward to fill it. Michael Schumacher, the ruthless German perfectionist, and Damon Hill, the English gentleman trying to honor his father's legacy. This was never going to end well. Schumacher had already established himself as someone who played by his own rules. Hill was the kind of driver who actually read the rulebook and expected others to follow it. You can see the problem. The 1994 season was a war of attrition disguised as a championship fight. Schumacher in the Benetton was faster, but controversial. Hill in the Williams was consistent, but always seemed to be fighting both Schumacher and the stewards. Then came Adelaide, the final race of the season. Schumacher leading the championship by 1 point, Hill breathing down his neck, everything on the line. Lap 36. Schumacher hits the wall, damages his car, and limps back onto the track. Hill sees his chance and goes for the inside line. What happened next depends on who you ask. Schumacher turned into Hill, taking them both out of the race. Championship over. Schumacher wins his first title. Accident or deliberate? Hill was convinced it was intentional. Schumacher claimed it was a racing incident. The stewards, in a decision that would haunt F1 for decades, did nothing. But here's where it gets really savage. Schumacher did it again. 1997. Jerez. Final race of the season. Schumacher versus Jacques Villeneuve for the championship. Sound familiar? This time, Schumacher's move was so blatant that even the stewards couldn't ignore it. He turned directly into Villeneuve's car. But this time, only Schumacher retired. Villeneuve continued and won the championship. The FIA's response was swift and brutal. They stripped Schumacher of his entire 1997 season. Not just the race, not just the points, everything. Erased from the record books like he'd never existed. It was the harshest penalty in F1 history, and it sent a clear message: even legends aren't above the rules. The Schumacher-Hill rivalry changed F1 forever. It established that championships could be won through intimidation and questionable tactics, but it also proved that eventually the sport would fight back. Hill never won another championship. Schumacher went on to win 5 more, but the shadow of those incidents followed both of them for the rest of their careers. And now we reach the ultimate rivalry. The one that didn't just destroy careers or friendships, it nearly destroyed the sport itself. Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost. The Brazilian god of speed against the French professor of precision. Fire versus ice. Passion versus calculation. 2 completely different philosophies of racing locked in a battle that would define a generation. This wasn't just a rivalry, this was a religious war fought at 200 miles per hour. It started innocently enough in 1988, when Senna joined Prost at McLaren. The team had the dominant car, and both drivers were guaranteed to fight for the championship. What could go wrong? Everything, again. The problem was that Senna and Prost represented everything the other despised about racing. Prost was methodical, calculating, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Senna was pure instinct, willing to risk everything for a single moment of perfection. Prost thought Senna was reckless and dangerous. Senna thought Prost was boring and political. They were both right. The first major explosion came at the 1989 Japanese Grand Prix. Senna needed to win to keep his championship hopes alive. Prost just needed to finish ahead of him. Lap 47. Senna went for a gap that didn't exist. Prost closed the door. They collided at the chicane, both cars spinning into the gravel. Prost climbed out. Championship secured. Senna got his car restarted, won the race, and was then disqualified for cutting the chicane during his recovery. Senna was convinced the stewards had conspired against him. He accused Prost of political manipulation. Prost accused Senna of dangerous driving. The sport was tearing itself apart. But 1990 was when things got truly savage. Japan again. Suzuka again. Championship on the line again. But this time, Senna had learned from his mistake. If the stewards wanted to decide championships in meeting rooms instead of on track, Senna would give them something to really think about. Lap 1, turn 1. Prost had pole position, but Senna was alongside him. The Frenchman turned in for the corner, probably expecting Senna to back out like any rational human being would. Senna didn't back out. He drove straight into Prost at 180 miles per hour, taking them both out of the race and securing his second championship. It was the most premeditated crash in F1 history. Senna later admitted he'd planned it from the moment he saw the starting grid. If Prost wanted to play politics, Senna would play demolition derby. The aftermath was nuclear. Prost accused Senna of attempted murder. Senna accused Prost of being a coward. The FIA threatened to ban them both. The media called it the death of sportsmanship. The rivalry ended when Prost retired in 1993, but the damage was done. Senna had proven that in F1, sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything. 4 years later, Senna was dead, killed at Imola while chasing his fourth championship. Prost was one of his pallbearers. The Senna-Prost rivalry showed us the ultimate truth about F1 rivalries. Sometimes the price of greatness is everything you hold dear. 4 rivalries, 4 different flavors of savage. Vettel and Weber showed us that workplace drama hits different when your office is a Formula 1 car. Hamilton and Rosberg proved that childhood friendships don't survive championship pressure. Schumacher and Hill demonstrated that legends can be just as petty as everyone else. But Senna and Prost? They showed us what happens when rivalry transcends sport and becomes something darker, more personal, more dangerous. These weren't just racing rivalries. They were human stories about ego, ambition, and the price of greatness. They remind us that underneath all the technology, politics, and corporate sponsorship, F1 is still about people. Flawed, passionate, sometimes savage people who happen to be really good at driving fast. The next time someone tells you F1 is boring, show them these rivalries. Because while the cars have gotten safer and the drivers more professional, the fundamental truth remains unchanged. Put 2 competitive people in fast cars at a championship trophy, and watch them try to destroy each other with a smile. That's not a bug in Formula 1. It's the feature that keeps us coming back for more. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Formula 1's most savage rivalries, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss our next pit stop into the wild world of F1.